Hey guys, Rob from Infinite Combo here, bringing you the next installment of our Deck Heads video, which will be analyzing my Rhys the Redeemed EDH deck. This deck has seen many different revisions over the years, just for the sheer length of time I've had it. It is my first... Is it my first? It is my first EDH deck. It originally started as Tolsimir Wolfblood, which was a creature that buffed both green and white creatures individually, as well as made a green and white token. It just kind of started as a good stuff deck, not as a token deck. Then I switched it to tokens with Trostani, Selesnya's Voice from Return to Ravnica, and then finally to my current commander, Rhys the Redeemed. Tolsimir Wolfblood is no longer in the deck. It was for a little while after I switched to Trostani, but Trostani is still in this deck to this day. Rhys is a very low-cost commander, only costing 1 mana, with a couple of extremely powerful abilities. The only downside to him is that his abilities are extremely narrow, which means your opponents pretty much know what type of deck you're playing if you're playing Rhys. He can make a token for 3 mana, and then he can double the number of tokens you have for 6 mana. So it's pretty obvious what you'll be playing if you have Rhys out. So, unlike a lot of generals, I actually don't play Rhys very early often, only because by himself he would be a mana sink if I was just casting him turn 1 and then trying to use his ability to make tokens. In fact, his ability to make a token is only used if I'm low on token generators in my opening hands. I generally cast Rhys between turns 4 and 6, which is after I use some mana acceleration, and hopefully I can cast him and then be able to get around to my next turn and use his ability to double whatever tokens I have. And that's usually kind of where everything gets out of hand. So for my mana base is pretty standard for a 2-color deck. I run a full suite of fetch lands in Windswept Heath, Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, Crozen Verge, Myriad Landscape, and Blighted Woodland to make sure that I get the colors I need to run my deck. I have a lot of cards with double and triple of the same or 2 colors, so I need to make sure I have the colors I need. I run the full suite of basic land type dual lands, Savannah, Temple Garden, and Canopy Vista. I run another group of dual lands here that have situations to them on coming into play tapped: Sunpetal Grove, Fortified Village, Temple of Plenty, and Selesnya Sanctuary. All of those help me get my color fixing in. As well as with my color fixing, I have my basic lands. I have 8 of each, plains and forest. And then finally, I have my utility lands. So I have Vidu-Ghazi, the City Tree, Keldoran Outpost, and Grove of the Guardian create some extra tokens. I have Strip Mine and Ghost Quarter to deal with problematic lands. I have Gabony Township to buff my entire team. And I have Arcane Lighthouse to deal with problematic Hexproof and Shroud generals or creatures that I really need to deal with so I can remove them. So token generators are the bread and butter of the deck. Without them, we don't have a use for Rhys's most powerful ability. I have creature tokens of all variety. Some of my favorite creatures in the deck that produce tokens are Verdant Force, which works much better in multiplayer games because it gets you a 1/1 Saproling on every upkeep, not just your own. Master of the Wild Hunt, which makes wolf tokens and then can use them to act as removal. Ant Queen, which is just a strong creature overall and then with a low mana ability can create a 1/1. And then Avenger of Zendikar, which makes a ton of plant tokens based on how many lands you have, and then buffs them every time you drop another land. All 5 of my planeswalkers can produce tokens. All 3 versions of Elspeth make 1/1 white soldiers, and both versions of Garruk make 3/3 green beasts, and then Primal Hunter can also make 6/6 worms. For enchantments, I have Awakening Zone and From Beyond, both which make either some sort of an Eldrazi token that can be sacrificed to give colorless mana. For sorceries, Nomad's Assembly, Stormherd, and Entreat the Angels, which can make very large armies very quickly, as well as Martial Coup, which can be used as both removal and as token generation. And then finally, my 1 instant speed token creator, White Sun Zenith. Now the one downside with tokens is protecting them. Having a large army, you need lots of ways to keep them in play. So as far as what I have for protecting my creatures, on the creature side, I have Dauntless Escourt, which can, for 1 turn, make my team indestructible. Frontline Medic, which as long as I trigger his battalion ability, will make all my creatures indestructible until end of turn. Loxodon Hierarch, which I can sacrifice to regenerate my entire army. And then Avacyn, which will proactively make my entire army indestructible. Now, Elspeth Knight-Errant, her last loyalty ability will also make an emblem that all of my artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands are indestructible. So that's another way that I can protect my army. And then finally, for non-creature cards, I have Eldrazi Monument, which just requires a sacrifice of a creature every turn, which in a token deck is not a problem. And then Rootborn Defenses, which is an instant that makes my entire army indestructible, and I get to make an extra copy of any single token that I have out. Winning the game with a bunch of 1/1s and 2/2s isn't easy, especially in a format with 40 starting life and between 2 and 4 opponents, so these cards help me really buff my army up. So Jazal Goldmane and Craterhoof Behemoth are easy ways to win the game. Jazal Goldmane requires some extra mana, while Craterhoof Behemoth just does it on his own. Beastmaster Ascension is my other big win condition. All it requires me to do is attack with 7 creatures. After that, my entire army gets +5/+5. Odric Master Tactician allows me to attack unblocked and makes an easy way to close out a game. If I have a decent army and drop this guy, it's game over. Elesh Norn Grand Cenobite buffs my army as well as saps my opponents, which makes it a lot harder for them to deal with my tokens when all of their creatures are 2 power and 2 toughness less than what they were. Now, other support that I have, Skullclamp I can use on all of my 1 toughness creatures to draw through my deck a lot faster. And then Doubling Season and Parallel Lives double the number of tokens I make. Doubling Season also doubles the amount of starting loyalty counters on any of my Planeswalkers, which means if I have Doubling Season out with Elspeth Knight-Errant, I can immediately use her last ability to make my entire board indestructible for the rest of the game. Finally, here are the tokens. So I have 2 of every token for every creature that I can make in the deck. My deck creates a lot of tokens really fast, so having this pile to really kind of show what I have is really useful in games. I definitely recommend anybody who uses any sort of tokens in their deck, just get a stack of these. They're usually 25 cents. You get them in booster packs a lot of times. It's very helpful in really showing your opponents what you have. And finally, I did add a few new cards recently to this deck. These are my most recent additions, 3 of them from Shadows over Innistrad, which is the newest set that just came out. We have Second Harvest, which is just a 4-mana instant that is Rhys's second ability. Hanweir Militia Captain, which is a 2/2, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more creatures, you transform him. And on the transformed side, it's a star creature with power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you make a 1/1 white and black human cleric. So he's a good token producer. And then Fortified Village is one of my new mana producers. And then I also recently just added Elesh Norn, Luminarch Ascension, which produces angel tokens. I actually didn't just add Fecundity, but I just got a new one for the deck. And then I'm testing Priest of Titania right now instead of Zakura Tribe Elder, just for its synergy with even having Rhys out on the board produces me 2 extra mana, or an extra mana instead of only grabbing me a land once. So this has been my quick overview of my Rhys the Redeemed deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Post down in the comments if you have any suggestions, if you play a token strategy in EDH, and you had any tips for synergies that I may be missing. Definitely like, share, and subscribe. Tell everybody you know. And finally, until next time, stay infinite.